Hello everyone, this is the great Lord and Master, Osiron, the Eternal, for what's going to be a follow-up to the I Ching video I just made, but this one is going to show the proper sequence of the trigrams and all 64 hexagrams. I actually made a mistake in the previous video. If you recall, you remember this little construct from the other video? And how it goes 3, 6, and then I had 4, 5 here, and then 4, 4, and 5, 5 here. Well, that was actually a mistake. I made a mistake on that. And I mixed up the 6 and the 8 trigrams, and it gave a weird presentation like that. And but this is how it really goes. This is the order. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And this translates down here. You're going to see what looks like a little rainbow structure here. Now, if you recall from the other video, I said that because this is the order, it doesn't necessarily have to go in order, and it doesn't. What happens is this. In the I Ching, one thing you have to keep in mind in the I Ching, it's not so much about the order of the trigrams or the hexagrams. What really matters is the opposition. Example being, so on this end you have all yin, okay, and on the complete other end you have all yang. And that's how you lay out the 8 by 8 grid. You put 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, 5 here, 6 here, 7 here, and 8 here. So they all nest together. They all nest together. And when you do that, it creates a connection between all these, and I have that illustrated by this little rainbow here. And when you add the 1 and the 3, the 1 and the 2, it gives you a 3. The 3 and the 4 gives you a 7. The 5 and the 6 gives you a 2 via 11. And then the 7 and the 8 gives you a 6 via 16. And this order numbers, if you recall from the other videos in this series, the infinite nature of 8 and the God is a woman, this same sequence shows up when you reduce the numbers. It gives you a 3, 7, and then a 2, 6. And then they all finally reduce to a 1 and an 8. This is doing the exact same thing with the I Ching. And it shows up here too, the same process is going on over here. You see this little square? Well, what this is when you put the hexagrams in a 8 by 8 square, 1 through 8 to 1 to 64, the outer row of hexagrams, there's 28 of them in the outer row, and then when you jump in, there's 20 of them in the next row, and then you jump in one more row, and there's 12 of them, and then in the dead center, there's 4, and that's how that goes. And then the numbers 28, 20, 12, and 4 reduce to a 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's showing a similar link to Russellian science, the concept of 4 in all of these videos that I've talked about, and what is it, what are those videos, the pulse of creation videos, where the pulse of creation is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, that has a 4 connotation to go along with it. Well, you're seeing that with this. It's amazing. Now, with the I Ching is all about 2, yin and yang. Okay, the Tao is the yin and the yang is the Tao. Okay, and this shows up over here. If you take the numbers if you take all the hexagrams 1 through 64 and put them in 2 columns, you go 1 through 32, and then you go up the other way, 33 to 64. Every one of the numbers all reduce to a 2. Every single one of them. And it does so by way of 2 numbers. The only numbers that show up before you reduce them are 20 and 11. Okay? And you see that here. And there's even a pattern with that. There's 12 20s, and all of those are in groups of 4. And then there's 20 11s, and those are in either a groups of 6, 5, or 3. And then when you add up 6, 5, and 3, that gives you 14, which is temperance, and that reduces to a 5. So even in this aspect, you're seeing the 4-5 presentation develop. And one other thing, you see this square up here. This is an interesting thing. When you have the I Ching laid out 1 through 64, okay, that's a perfectly balanced 8 by 8 square. Now, if you recall from the video, again, the Pulse of Creation, the first Pulse of Creation video, that has a strong theme of 72. That number 72 is a powerful number. Well, if you add one more row below that, of 8 below that, that would give you a number of 65 to 72. And it does something very interesting with the numbers. Because it goes 1 through 8, and the single digits are 0 through 9, or in the terrestrial world 1 through 9, because of that, there's one number that doesn't get used in that top row, and every row has a number that doesn't get used because of that. The top row is a 9, the next row is an 8, the row below that is a 7, then it's 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. It goes all the way down. And then, if you take all the numbers in any given row and reduce them, it does its mirror. On this side, it reduces to a 9, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And in this case, the 9 is acting as 0. And over here in this little construct is what happens when you combine both sides. This row is the column going up, and the red is the column going down. And then you'll notice all the numbers, again, equalize and reduce to 9. And it keeps the Kundalini conduits in place to do that. So you're seeing, again, the beautiful symmetry of all of these structures and how the single digit code is the template for the esoteric systems. Now over here you're going to notice something, okay? You notice, like, the numbers above each trigram are the number of lines used in the construction of it. And at the root and the base, you're going to see the 3 and the 6 for 3 lines and 6 lines. And over here you see 4 and 5 and another 4 and 5. But over here you see a 5 and a 4. See, at first I thought that was a mistake, and I undid it, and it messed everything up when I did that. But this is actually right. And what happens is, when you add 54 with 45 and 45, it gives you 144. And I have videos about that, about the 144 sequence. The spiraling serpent of Lord Osiron deals with that, and how that's a very important number, 144. But then if you add 36 to this 144, it gives you 180. And of course 180 is half of a circle in degrees. And it's telling you that this is only half of the constructs. And we know that the trigrams are only half of a hexagram. Well, this is showing up in the numbers. It's telling you via the numbers that it's only half. And you need to add another half to form a complete system. Further illustrating and showing that the I Ching is all about two, about duality. And over here, and one thing about this too, some people may be saying that that order is just your opinion. That's just using your logic, and it doesn't have to be that way. That's only because you say it goes that way. Well, actually, that's not true. The single digit code and the true tree of life will validate this as the proper order too, as I'll show you right now. Okay, up here with the root structures, you got all yin and then all yang. Well, there's 0 polarity in here, so I put a 0 here for that. And then in this first construct here, after you introduce a masculine aspect to this and then a feminine to this, and you do it in the center because of balance, when you do that, there's only one of these, one of each of these. There's only one of these. There is no reversal for this, okay? So there's only a 1. Now these two sets, there is a reversal for, okay? So example being, over here on the bottom you have 2 yin lines and a yang above, and its reverse is seen over here with 2 yin above and then a yang below. Same thing with this one. You got 2 yang below and a yin above, and this is the reverse of that with 2 yang above and a yin below, and that's why I put a 2 here. So this is the absolute order of the trigrams. It goes 0, 1, and 2, which is the same as a true tree of life of 0, 1, and 2. And when you build this following the rule of the feminine first, it's congruent in that way too, because once you break out of this and get into here, the feminine is first and then the masculine, and then this one, you put the feminine first, because these constructs, the hexagrams, actually you read them from the bottom to the top. Okay, so if you're doing a reading with hexagrams, you build them from the bottom and go to the top, and that's still following the rule of feminine to masculine, because the earth is feminine and then the air or the sky is masculine, so it's going from the earth to the sky, it's rising. And that's how you do that. So that's why you put this one here, because it's feminine first and it's feminine dominant. So feminine first and feminine dominant, and then you got masculine dominant here, right? And then this one is masculine dominant too, and it also reverses. So this is masculine dominant, but the feminine goes first. That's why you put that here. So it may be masculine dominant, but because of the order of operation, you put the feminine first, and then this one goes next after that. And that's why you do that. And you'll also notice, if you take these numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, which is all yin, and then combine that with 8, 6, 4, 2, and push it into itself, it does this, and then all the numbers reduce to a 9 again. Now over here, there's something else about this that's very interesting. On this side of on this side of this black line here, the yin side, there are only 4 yang lines on this side, and there's 8 yin lines to compare with that. And it's the exact reverse over here. On this side, there's only 4 yin lines, and then the other ones are 8 yang lines. So it's giving you, again, a 1-2 presentation, or a 2-1 presentation. And another interesting link with the tarot is, in these lower 3 groups here, the terrestrial lines, the number of lines used are 21 lines in this construct here. So there's 21 lines in that. And it's showing that here. If you want to read it on how it goes, you put yin first. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, and this is a 1-to-2 ratio. So it goes 2-1 and 1-2 over here. And now there's one thing. Now this next section is probably going to be a contentious point that I'm going to make, but if you look at the I Ching from the model of it being a 2 dominant structure theme, and over here, what you're going to see is, this order sequence works in the 8x8 square. But if you were to try to put this into a circle, it would mess up the numbers, because the I Ching is all about opposition, as I said. So if you take this 8x8 grid, because it goes exactly how it's laid out, it goes 1 through 8 all the way to 64 in order. But if you tried to put all those hexagrams in a circle, it would mess up the order, because you would put this one here, the hexagram that's all yin on top, and its opposition is obviously all yang, and that would go on the bottom. But if you put it in a circle and maintain the same numbers, 64 would go right next to it on the top, and that would throw off the counterbalance effect of the I Ching, so it wouldn't work. In a singular form, it wouldn't work. But if you do it like this, it will work. If you realize that the 64 is only half of a circle, just like this is, the 1 through 64 is only half of a circle, and then it starts again and goes up to complete the circle. So you really go through the hexagrams twice to form a complete circle. That's how you do that. And how do I know that? Well, because the 64 reduces to a 1, and on this side 64 reduces to a 1. If you add 64 and 64, that gives you 128, and that reduces to a 2. Again, yin and yang. Now up here, to help illustrate that point, you see the first line that's yin, okay, and that is 0, and then the yang line is 0 and 1. Because what happens, as I've explained before, is there really is no such thing as 1. There's only 0 and 2. Because as soon as you create that 1, as soon as that 1 is created, you by default automatically have 2 states of 0 and 1. There's no way around that. So, and that's what we're seeing here. So the 0 state is actually the 1, and then when you create that 1, it instantly creates duality with 0 and 1. And then from the perspective of the 1, the 0 state would only appear to be another 1, so that's a 1 and a 1. And the same thing here, a 1 and a 1. So that is why that's doing that. That's definitely, some people may, be raising their eyebrows about that. But it's congruent and it makes sense. Because if you look over here, the I Ching is, as we're seeing clearly, it's all about duality, it's all about 2s, because all these numbers reduce to a 2. And when it does that. And over here, let me get to this too. This is, people might be saying, what the hell is this? Well, I've been drawing the true tree of life and the jewel using the standard Kabbalistic model of the upright tree of life, because that's the base, that's the base I was working with. But I realized yesterday that really doesn't make sense, because all these times that I've been drawing the true tree of life, the jewel is always upside down. So that's why I call it the hanged man. I call the jewel the hanged man. Well, but if you look at it from our perspective in the material world here, what really goes on is the man is now upright, and the true tree of life is actually inverted. And we're seeing sort of the machinations of that now. See, there's a little pool of water here. This is the abyss, and the supernal triangle is below the abyss. The 0, 1, and 2 root is below the abyss, and then it rises out of that. That's the water. And then the first thing that we see, or the first thing that's noticeable when you come out of the abyss, is the fire. So it goes fire and then air out of the abyss. And that sort of follows the theme of why Aries is fire, and why Aries begins the zodiac with 1, because that's the birth of the emperor. The emperor was born in Aries, but as we know, but the winter months of the zodiac are the womb. Well, it's the same exact thing here. So it's the idea of creation is born from the womb now. It starts with fire and then air, and then it goes into the body, which is Malkuth, and that is where the jewel of creation, and that's what the jewel of creation is. Now, there's one interesting thing you're going to notice. See, I put a pentagram in the middle here for the 5 number, and I noticed the other Sephiroth look like a pentagram around it. So if you take that 5 in the middle, the outer 5 Sephiroth look just like a pentagram in relation to that. And if you add all the numbers besides that 5 in the middle, like 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, it adds to 28, and 28 reduces to a 1. If you add that 1 to the 5 that's in the middle, that gives you 6. But if you add 5 to 28, that gives you 33. Okay? So now we're seeing the correlation to 33 and Freemasonry and all that here. And it's sort of suggesting, Freemasonry, there's a lot of debate of whether Freemasons are evil or all that. And I say it's not really as cut and dried as that, because all the Freemasons most of the Freemasons in the neighborhood where you live, they are not evil people. They just joined a system, and they think it's sort of like a church. You know what I mean? Most of the people who go to church are just lemmings, and they don't think, they're not evil people. They just follow along. Well, Freemasonry isn't that much different. It goes in the degrees in Scottish Rite Freemasonry go from 1 to 33. I suspect that any nefarious actions within Freemasonry aren't going to happen until above 33. So if you're going through the ranks of Freemasonry and you're going through 1 through 33, you're not going to know the darker side until above 33 degrees. So, and what that means is, because they're going to groom you, because they say anyone can join Freemasonry. All you have to do is ask. But no one is going to as soon as you walk in the door of a hall of Freemasonry, you're not going to start killing babies on day one. Any evil actions would happen much, much later. They're going to vet you. They're going to make sure that you are one of them before they, give you the key to the city. Because, Freemasonry, you have to understand one thing about Freemasonry. Freemasonry is basically the Jewish supremacy ideology for non-Jews. That's all it is. It's basically the Jewish philosophy for non-Jews. And that's what it is. So, in everything that comes from the Jew is toxic, and Freemasonry can't be any different. So, and this is sort of showing that with the number 33, because if the system were to be wholesome and authentic, it should be 36, not 33. So when you say 33, what you're sort of saying is you're only acknowledging the masculine elements and you're leaving out the feminine. It's sort of like a subversive way to denounce the feminine without even really realizing it. Because when you say 33, you're only talking about the masculine root of 6 and you're leaving out the yin side, or these bottom 3. So a better way or a more wholesome structure of grades would be 36 if you want it to be congruent with the truth of nature. That's the way it is. So, when it comes to these, any of the offshoots of Judaism, you really got to scrutinize carefully, because they're tricky people, and they hide things, they do things in a way that you would never notice unless you really dig. As I've shown in the Tarot and the True Tree of Life series, I mean, the tree of death and stagnation, or the Kabbalistic tree, is a perfect example of that trickery and deception. So yeah, that's it. So I think that's basically it. This is just the I Ching decoded here. And now let me show you a picture of the actual 64 grid, how it looks. This is how it looks. See, I didn't want to put this on the board because this is how that looks. The 64 laid out in order, like that. That's how that looks. So you can look at that and stuff. And every single one of those are mirrored with its opposite too. That's the thing. So example being, if 1 goes up here in this corner, 64 goes in this corner. If 2 goes next to it, 63 is its mirror next to it. And on it goes. So this builds in a two-way stream, forward and backwards. So because there's one thing, most of the I Ching layouts use the King Wen sequence, and how they call that in the King Wen sequence, they would call this all yin lines 1, and they would call the one next to it of all yang 2. And that's simply just not the case. And that's the way they do it with the sequence. And also, there's one other aspect of the King Wen sequence that is different than this too, is how they do it is, if they're using trigrams, right? Say it goes like this. Say it goes broken, solid, broken, solid, broken, solid, okay? They would do the same thing, only go in reverse the other way. So if this is going down, broken, solid, broken, solid, broken, solid, it would do the same exact thing going up the other way. It would go broken, solid, broken, solid, broken, solid, and that's how they would call the reverse. But that's not congruent with this either. As a matter of fact, all the models I saw for the I Ching used the King Wen sequence. But there was only one other model that I saw on pictures that used it the way I do it. Because the way I do it is, every line that shows up, I'll use this as an example. You got a broken line and 2 solids. Well, the mirror to that is the exact reversal of the line. So if there's a solid line, the other line is going to be a yang line. And that's how the reversal goes on the way I do it. And I saw the image of one other way they do that. And it was written in Chinese. I had no idea what it was saying next to it. It was all written in Chinese. And that one obscure picture also put yin at number 1 too. They used, they put the yang lines, but don't forget, in the traditional I Ching, these broken lines would be considered yin, And this was called yin, and it was put in the #1 position. So this obscure picture that I found on the internet actually puts yin first as well. So, okay, so that's it. Thank you and namaste.